Hello, and welcome to the Product Insiders LinkedIn Live series, where we interview product leaders and learn how they leveraged customer insights to navigate tough product decisions. I'm your host, Zach Lyons, managing partner of Agile Innovation Advisors. Now, if you're joining us live today, if you would, please enter your location in the chat so we know who is with us. And today, our special guest is Dorin Horsfall, Senior Technical Product Manager, formerly at Visa. And we'll be asking Dorin some questions, but if you have any specific questions for her, please enter them in the chat and we'll get to them in a bit. So with that, let's begin. So Dorin, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach, for having me. It's a pleasure to be on here.
Yeah, I'm glad you could make some time. I know you've been busy. So I'll cut right to it. As I usually do, I'm trying to get insights on a story you'd like to share and some lessons learned. So just to set the stage for us, in thinking about a tough product decision that you've had to navigate, can you please tell us a little bit about your role at the time and a little bit about the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, through my product career and my product experience, I've had to, on various occasions, whether it be ruthlessly, prioritizing the features on my roadmap or negotiating with my, stakeholders to, respectfully say, no, this feature we might need to hold off on, and ultimately what is driving my decision is to make sure that at the end of the day, I can deliver value to my users. And so to your question, I can talk about a time that I made one of those tough decisions. And so I had just taken on it wasn't new, but, I had just come on that team, and this was an enterprise AI powered product. And this solution was being offered to retailers and grocers to help them competitively with their pricing strategy. So in this solution, had the AI models that would be recommending pricing to this user, and they can now use that to ultimately price their products and be competitive in the marketplace. So that was the space that I was in. So that's a little bit of the context.
Gotcha. And you were the product manager for that product, or one
Correct.
product
Yeah.
manager on it.
Product owner / product manager, correct.
Okay. So interesting. It's a cool space, right? Using AI, obviously a lot of hot area these days. So maybe just tell us a little bit about the challenge or issue you were trying to overcome. I'm sure there was a lot of them, but maybe you could, pick one challenge or some difficult decision you'd like to share.
Yeah. So, like I said, I came on this team, quickly onboarded to understand what solution space I'm working in. And there was also a feature that, was really high impact in two avenues. The first one was, for the company, it was going to be a very high revenue generator. And for my users, it was going to be very impactful in how they were able to see the decisions that they had made. Remember, I mentioned that this solution was offering recommending pricing strategies. So the user had the liberty to accept that strategy or not. And so this solution would let them, over a period of time, assess and do some comparison of whether they had made the right decisions, or, see how the decisions were trending, if it was upward or downward. So it was pretty critical. And it was tough in the sense that, the data that would fuel this solution we had some challenges around that. The data was limited because, initially this was a nice to have, but, as time progressed, and by the time that I came on, it was now a must have. So things had changed. And so ultimately, it was tough to, get that solution going. But, I did a deep dive into the data to do some analysis, understand the nuances around the data to see, what was feasible and where value can still be provided. And also did some one-on-ones with my user to present them with a POC based on that data set that I had reviewed. And so, working closely with the customer, which is very key. At the end of the day, we're there to make sure that we're aligned with the customer, the user. I was able to, with my team, be able to rescope that problem space and see where value could still be offered. And so with that, I was able to walk through an MVP, initial version of that solution that the user was happy to, as time progressed, would be able to iterate on.
Okay. So, and just for my benefit, just stepping back, was there a specific like business problem or outcome that you were trying to help achieve? For example, more customer adoption or customer retention, or was there some issue that was happening that you were saying, okay, how do we create more value for customers?
So there were two layers of value here for the user. They wanted to be able to do a historical assessment of business decisions that they had made, just to make sure that they were still on the right track. You want to do a retrospective. Did we make the right move, XYZ on their end? And for my company that I worked with, this was also a huge revenue generator in terms of the volume of business that this user was doing. So there were both objectives that I was working with there.
Okay. All right. So your company that you were working for, this is a big product for them as far as revenue generation. So looking to continually add value to the customer.
Exactly. Yes.
And then from the user's perspective, it sounds like there was a challenge around keeping a history of these suggested pricing, optimizing pricing, so they could go back to that, right, and look at that and deal
Exactly.
with it, learn from that.
They want to be able to do a retrospect of, at this time last year, and I don't want to go into too much details just because of proprietary information, but be able to assess over a period of time. They had the liberty to select the time frame they wanted to assess the pricing strategy that they had taken either from us or if they overridden our pricing recommendations, ultimately to see the big picture for a time frame and see, was it trending positively, or is this something we want to keep doing in the future? And so it was part of their pricing strategy. So that was the.
Oh, I see. And was that something then that you discovered through those one-on-one interviews with your customer? Is that they were looking for that help with that, or that's the feature they wanted, but they were struggling with some problem or challenge? Or how tell us a little bit about sort of how did you figure that out? Like how did you discover this?
Yeah, no. So I mean, initially in the backlog, it was nice to have, but then eventually, it became a major pain point for my users, and had those meetings with them to understand why they needed, why the priority had changed, why they needed this feature now, and be able to understand how it would impact their business, overall. And so, yeah, that was the scenario that I was working with.
Okay. And so what did you do? How did you approach doing this? Like, can you tell us a little detail about how you've found out more about it and how you would implement this solution, this feature?
So how I went about getting to understand their use cases.
Exactly.
So after getting insight about what they were trying to do is talk with them, talk with the customer, the user, and let them walk me through a day in the life of what you're trying to do. The primary users that I was solutioning for is like, walk me through what you're trying to accomplish. Walk me through, you go into the solution, you log in, and you want to price a product, but you also want to lean on historical information to see, how I had priced this product in the past around this time frame. Once again, I was dealing with retailers, so they have yearly or seasonal promotions, and making sure that they were not possibly repeating mistakes that they had done in the past, or continuing something that is working. Like, hey, if it's not broken, don't fix it, type thing. But they needed access to that historical context to be able to confidently move forward in their current day pricing approach.
That's cool. I love that approach where you walk me through a day in the life to understand their workflows, right? What they're doing, where
It's
they
so
struggle.
important.
And so I'm curious, did you do this on your own and do that research, or did you work with other folks to do the research? Like, how did you actually go about doing that for the benefit of people listening if they wanted to do something like that?
Yeah, no, thankfully, I do have a UX team that I was working with as well. And so, and also like a colleague of mine. So both of us and, the UX team, scheduled that one-on-one call with the customer. And then the UX team mostly driving the interview process. But, we've already had our behind the scene conversation on the goal or what we're trying to achieve with that meeting. So you always have an objective of your call. What are you trying to accomplish with the call? What do you want to get out of it at the end of the day so that you can go back and implement and really solve that pain point of the user. So that was kind of like the process that I went through.
Okay. So you had a goal or like a hypothesis, something you were trying to learn, and you went out and did these day in the life walk through to try to figure out, okay, is this actually a problem or a challenge or not, and or what is the challenge? Okay. And so what did you learn? Like, what was the result of those things? Was there some like aha moment or something that hit you, or was it more just a learning overall?
There were some interesting discoveries, and that's I think I'd mentioned some nuances around the data. So, for instance, like if you go to your local HEB grocery store, they have like Halloween candy
Mm,
priced at a certain tag, and this time next year, or if you're reflecting back to the previous year, it may not necessarily be the same price, or you may not even see that variety of candy. So it's still in the candy category, but it may not be the exact brand, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
categories of products are priced, but you're not guaranteed that you will um, be able to price it exactly the same way in the upcoming year. Of course, we have our generic seasons. You have Easter, you've got Thanksgiving, you've got Halloween, and there's always some promotion around that period, but it's not necessarily the exact same promotion year over year, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So okay, so they were struggling with a little bit about because there's changes in the product, I guess,
uh-huh.
even well, the
Correct.
manufacturers, right, making the products candy, right, can shift to their product, right? So they're trying to look historically to understand what they did to help inform what they're
Exactly.
going to do. Okay.
Exactly. And even like an example, so this is just a side story. I was in Germany and went to visit my younger brother, and I found this, like deodorant. Really, it's organic. It's supposed to be good for you and no chemicals and all that. So I purchased it. And a few weeks later, I had him like go back and ship me another one. And he's like, they don't have it in stock anymore. So if as a retailer, I'm looking back maybe next year, I'm trying to see category, like cosmetics or hygiene products. I'm looking to compare how I price that deodorant last year versus this year. That's going to be a gap because I don't have that product anymore. I have something comparable, but it's not the exact one to one, you see. So there's that challenge sometimes with your products.
Interesting. And so what happened with the insights? Were you able to implement this historical pricing feature? Like, tell us a little bit about kind of the result of that.
Yeah, so after speaking with the user and understanding what their end goal was, and then also understanding the nuances around that data, try to talk with them in aligning with them and agreeing that we could rescope the problem space, that it may not necessarily be um they wanted like an extended or like a defined number of years of data, and we didn't have that at that time.
Mm,
So scoping that down to a smaller time frame where you can still do comparison, but it won't be over like this extended period of time. So that was the middle ground. Yeah,
yeah, just not enough data, or at least not at the time, right? Over time, more data.
exactly. Yeah, but
Okay.
I mean, with subsequent iterations, the plan was to, after the MVP was out the gate, we would go back and iterate and fine tune that solution for the user.
Did you find you had to do anything to kind of manage expectations, either with internal stakeholders or customers, to help, given that you weren't able to sort of do what fully they wanted, kind of a partial solution?
Right.
Anything
I mean, I
that,
think they also understood that at the end of the day, they were the custodians of the data that was needed for this solution. And, understanding that with that limitation, we could only solution for, a specific time frame, which they were willing to work with I and my team to eventually, as time progressed, work towards a target timeline to provide that data that we needed to give that robust end-to-end solution that they were originally requesting for.
I see. Oh yeah, because it's their data, right? So they can't blame you
Exactly.
for not.
We
Okay,
can't
so
generate. It has to
yeah,
be real life data, So yeah.
right. So so they understood that. Oh yeah, it's our data, but over time we would be able to have a full, more history, however
Right.
many
Right.
years of data, and it's super interesting. So it's a kind of a classic customer needs something, or at least it wasn't a big deal, became a bigger deal. You went out, did some day in the life research to understand sort of how they would use this. You developed a solution, even though it wasn't fully what they wanted. You were able to give them something at least partially, right? And then over time improve it. In this case, because there's more
Exactly.
data, right? But sometimes you don't have enough development resources to build a full feature. You start with the basic and you keep building. But if you look back on this and let's say you had a similar challenge, how would you approach it? Would you do the same thing, or would you do something differently if you had to kind of do this kind of process again?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think even with any successful, feature rollout,
Mm.
no matter how good it was, there's always room for growth. It's important. I always do a retrospective of, what went wrong, what could be done better. And so in this instance, two things that I think I would do would be to, start that data collection process sooner. And the data collection, I mean, is the one that would uh, eventually support that robust end-to-end solution for the initial request of what they were asking. So just have that process begin earlier, because it takes time to gather data, real good data,
Sure.
and then also diving a little bit more deeper into the nuances around the data and the edge cases of what the user would be experiencing when they use this solution. So those are some things that I would do differently.
Oh, interesting. So understanding the edge cases, because do you think it would give you more insight or better insight earlier? Do you feel?
I think it's just making sure that you have a robust, like, 360 perspective on, so there's no gotchas down the road. Make sure that you've done a good job of rigorously understanding that problem space to account for anything that they could run, any edge case that they could run into in the future. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that is an interesting learning. I know a lot of product managers will sort of take average, right? Like here's the average of what people think, but sometimes these edge cases or even edge use cases can really inform, nuggets, right? So not necessarily aggregating everyone into one little bucket, but really kind of thinking about the individuals themselves and understanding why, right? This is an edge case, because eventually edge cases can become mainstream, right? If
Exactly.
you understand the kind of what's behind it. I think that's interesting. Yeah. Too often we're so quick to, okay, what's the average need or what's the average
The
issue?
happy
But
path.
averaging, yeah, no
Yeah.
one's average, right? Everyone's got their own thing. So that's actually good insight.
Yeah. And
And oh, go
mhm.
ahead. Sorry,
No, I
Dorin.
was gonna say, and also even in my way back in my engineering days, after programmed or coded for the correct or the happy path, you would say you now become pessimistic and see how you can, you know, quote unquote break the code. Look for ways that you didn't think outside the box to make sure that that code was pretty sound. So it's the same thing. You have your business requirements, you have the workflow that you are solutioning for, but think about how else can something deviate from, like, what your user is trying to accomplish, and explore that as well.
Yeah, I love that. It's like putting on, right, a different hat, right, and trying to look at maybe from a different perspective to
Yeah,
see what else might we do here. That's interesting. I will say, if there's anyone listening live, I know a lot of folks, it's summertime or just getting over summer, maybe busy. This will be up on LinkedIn. So, of course, I have a chance to post questions later, like any LinkedIn posting, and we can answer those questions. But if you do have a question for you live, you can post them now. We'll try to get to them. I do, while we're waiting, you want to say thank you, Doreen, for sharing your story. Really interesting. Uh, you know, definitely learned something from your experience. I
I'm
hope
glad.
others did as well.
Yeah,
It is, I love hearing what people's stories or challenges, what they did and how they overcame them. I think everyone has sort of an interesting perspective and story to tell.
absolutely. Well, yeah, we can all learn from each other. So yeah, I agree.
And that's my hope, is having folks, participate and share their story with the community at large, so they can learn from each other. And I hope everyone obviously learned at least one thing from our discussion today with Doreen. I don't see any questions coming in. So I guess with that, again, we can continue the chat in LinkedIn. I will say, uh, please stay tuned for our next Product Insiders. We'll continue to do them on LinkedIn. If obviously you're interested in being an interviewee, please reach out to me. Also, if you have any challenges gathering customer insights, navigating tough product decisions, you can message me as well right on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to chat. And so I'll say until next time, I'm your host, Zach Lyons with Agile Innovation Advisors, and take care, everyone. And thank you, Doreen, for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was good. Thanks.